Today's lesson is A Land of Extremes, My Journey Across Chile. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to continue talking about our writer's journey across Chile. He's enjoying the great outdoors. Last time we talked about the fact that he arrived in Santiago and then went down south to Patagonia, which is 3,000 miles south of Santiago. And he had some great time there at the Torres del Paine National Park.
Absolutely. And we got to enjoy some of the things that our writer saw in the park, from the granite mountains that were towering over you like stone guardians to the crystal clear waters of the lake. We got to see some guanacos, which is the local llama. And of course, we also enjoyed riding in a boat or canoeing in a boat on one of the lakes and rivers in the park with glacial water all around and the sound of cracking ice like thunder in the mountains. So very, very interesting. So let's keep going with this fascinating trip in a beautiful part of the world that very few people really get the chance to visit. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to see, or to at least feel, what it's like to be there in Patagonia. So let's continue on.
Leaving behind the stunning landscapes of Patagonia, I traveled north to a completely different world, the Atacama Desert. The sharp contrast was immediately apparent, the cold blues of the south giving way to the dry warmth and reddish shade of the north. While staying in a small, dusty town of old clay buildings and narrow streets, I visited the famous Valley of the Moon. Over millions of years, the wind has shaped the rocks there into strange forms, and, as the sun set, the land glowed in shades of orange and red under the vast sky.
大家好，第一部分介绍形容词 stunning， 它的意思是极漂亮的，令人惊艳的。例如 The sunset over the ocean was absolutely stunning. 海上的日落绝对令人惊艳。或者 The stunning poll results showed that the candidate's support had dipped in numbers. 令人震惊的民调结果显示那名候选人的支持度数据下跌。下一个看到形容词 apparent， 表示明显的或是显而易见的。例如 The home didn't show any apparent damage after the storm. 住家在暴风雨后没有明显损坏。或是 Roger's excitement was apparent when he opened the gift. Roger 打开礼物时的兴奋之情是显而易见的。往后看到形容词 reddish， 指微红的、略带红色的或是淡红的。例如 Phyllis dyed her hair reddish brown. Phyllis 把头发染成了红棕色。也可以说 The earth here has a reddish color. 这里的土壤是偏红的颜色。接着介绍名词 shade， 表示色彩的深浅、浓淡，也可以是色调的意思。我们可以说 That shade of blue will look very nice on you. 你穿这种深浅的蓝色会很好看。又或者说 Do you have this scarf in a lighter shade of gray? 这条围巾有没有浅一点的灰色？继续看到形容词 dusty， 意思是尘土飞扬的、布满灰尘的。例如 The dusty road left the traveler's clothing caked in dirt. 尘土飞扬的路让旅人的衣物覆满结成块的泥土。再一个例子 The room that had been closed for a few months smelled dusty. 那间紧闭好几个月的房间闻起来都是灰尘味。
Okay, so here in the first paragraph today, it says, Leaving behind the stunning landscapes of Patagonia, I traveled north to a completely different world, the Atacama Desert. So he was leaving behind the stunning landscapes of Patagonia. He decided to leave. He's seen enough. He probably doesn't have a lot of time or whatever, so now it's time to check out another part of the country. So he left Patagonia behind. Patagonia, of course, has the stunning landscapes there, of course, in that national park. There are probably other things to see down there as well. It's a pretty big area there. If something's stunning, it really captures your attention. It's really great to look at. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. So there were stunning landscapes down there. But he had to move on, and he traveled north to a completely different world, the Atacama Desert. I'm sure he passed through Santiago on his way up to the Atacama Desert I understand that's really a terrible desert there. It's one of the world's most dangerous deserts.
I think it's also the driest place in the world, something like 2 millimeters of rain per year or something like that. So you definitely have to be prepared if you're going to be traveling in a desert for any length of time. So do be aware of that. And yes, the sharp contrast, obviously, was immediately apparent. We were in sort of a lush mountain environment. We had lakes, we had fields of grass and stuff, and now we're in a dry place where there's almost nothing alive and very little green growing. That would be definitely true. So there's a sharp contrast. There's a big, very noticeable difference between the two places, the one that he came from and now the one he is currently in, and that became immediately apparent. If something is apparent, it's clear, it's obvious, it's there to be seen. It's not something that's hidden that you have to kind of figure out or look at the subtle clues. No, it's very obvious right in front of you. It's immediately apparent when you go from a place with green and rain and life to a place that's very dry and cold and dusty with nothing living. The cold blues of the south giving way to the dry warmth and reddish shade of the north. So yeah, there's another great way of getting the idea here with some different colors and the contrasts. The cold blues of the south, of course, we would have the mountains, the granite, we would have the ice and snow and things like that, kind of creating a blue light during the daytime. And that's giving way to, that's sort of changing slowly, that is sort of evolving from one type of landscape, one type of climate to another. So it's giving way to, it's evolving or changing into the dry warmth and reddish shade of the north. Yeah, deserts often have rocks that may have iron in them, and that might oxidize, turning red, turning that kind of rusty, brownish, reddish kind of color. So that could be what we're describing here, reddish, meaning in a red kind of way. So not fully red, but in a red kind of way. If people are described as having red hair, many of them don't actually have red hair. They have reddish hair, sort of orange, red, brown, that type of shade. And a shade is a variation of color. Dark blue, light blue, medium blue, navy blue, gray blue, pale blue. These are all shades of blue because there's not just one blue, right? Depends how you mix other colors and white and dark into it. So different shades of blue. This is a reddish shade. So there'd be red areas, brownish areas, orangish yellow areas, all of that, but definitely desert-type landscapes.
Right, so we describe color as being either cool, cold, or warm. I don't think we say hot so much, but basically...
Say hot pink.
Hot pink, I guess, yes. That would be more of a reddish color. But yes, the cooler colors would be the blues, different shades of blue or different hues of blue. And then the warmer ones would be reddish tones like light red, dark red, crimson, and things like that. So yes, indeed, the color of the landscape sort of changed, and it says, while staying in a small dusty town of old clay buildings and narrow streets, I visited the famous Valley of the Moon. Okay, so when you travel, of course, you need to find a place to stay, and usually you're going to stay in some small town somewhere or a big city or whatever, and this is in the desert, so he stayed in a small town that was kind of dusty. Dusty just means very fine dirt all over the place. It doesn't mean it's really dirty, it's just because of the environment. There's lots of dust around. You have to keep cleaning things up all the time. And the buildings were made of clay. Basically, that's a kind of dirt. It also had these narrow streets. So, yeah, the small town was probably pretty picturesque itself, pretty scenic, but he was there to check out the desert, and so he visited the famous Valley of the Moon.
Wow, great name. What is the Valley of the Moon? It says over millions of years, the wind has shaped the rocks there into strange forms. And as the sun set, the land glowed in shades of orange and red under the vast sky. So another wonderful image here. So millions of years. This is, of course, a place where geology has been shaped and changed. And when we're talking about geology or the earth and rocks and stuff, we're not usually talking about tens of years or hundreds of years. We're talking thousands of millions of years for mountains to be created and valleys to be formed and things like that, because the changing of the surface of the earth through wind and water action is something that does take a very, very long time. So here for millions of years, unlike other places where water might shape the land through floods and rivers and things like that. There, they don't have the water, but the wind has shaped the rocks into strange forms. They might look different than rocks that have, of course, been eroded and sort of rubbed away by rivers and lakes and water action. Wind action will create different forms or different shapes that you don't often find in other parts of the world because that is much less common. And as the sun set, as the sun goes down, you get all these wonderful shadows on these wonderful shapes. And of course, the light will change also as the sun sets, right? The light becomes warmer, a little bit darker, and of course, it can make the colors seem to be slightly different, go through different shades or different hues. So the land glowed in shades of orange and red, more of these reddish shades, orange, red, brown, and this is under the vast sky. Yeah, a lot of people, when they go to desert areas, they talk about the hugeness of the sky, how the sky just seems to be so immense because, of course, you have no trees on the horizon. You don't have things to block out the view of the sky, and it feels like the sky is just much bigger than in other parts of the world. And when something is very big and covers a huge area, that's a great word to use, vast. The Pacific is a vast ocean. Russia is a vast country. It's very, very large and covers a huge area of land. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll be back with the second part of the article, which we'll listen to now.
It was when night fell, though, that the sky became truly extraordinary. The Atacama is home to several of the world's biggest telescopes, and now I understand why. The air was so clear and the darkness so complete that the stars looked close enough to touch. Watching the Milky Way stretch across the heavens felt so peaceful, as if the universe itself had stirred something deep within me.
第二部分看到形容词 extraordinary， 它表示非凡的、非常奇特的或是特别的。可以说 Dr. Collins made an extraordinary discovery in the field of medicine. Collins 博士在医学领域上取得了非凡的发现。
Okay, here's the second part of our lesson for today. It begins by saying, it was when night fell, though, that the sky became truly extraordinary. So here, night fell, which means night came, day gave way to night, and it became dark, and you could see the stars. And he says, the sky became truly extraordinary. Extraordinary can mean beyond special. It's not just ordinary, but it's actually extremely special. It's really cool. It's really great. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. And yes, it became really fantastic here, extraordinary. Some people say extraordinary, but the most common pronunciation is extraordinary, which means extremely special.
Incredible, unbelievable, or to use the more modern term, it was awesome. It was very, very amazing and very memorable. The Atacama is home to several of the world's biggest telescopes, and now I understand why. Okay, so we're stargazing here. We're looking at the night sky, all the impressive stars and planets and other things we can see up there. And apparently this is not just our writer who's discovered that the night sky in the Atacama is pretty impressive. Scientists know this too. It's home to, or it's where we can find, it's the location of several of the world's biggest telescopes. So they actually have scientific observatories down there, space science or astronomy research bases down there with telescopes, with things that can look into the sky and look at planets and galaxies and stars millions and billions of miles away, because it's an area that's very dry, the atmosphere is very clear, it's far away from big cities, so there's no light pollution. It's just a really good spot to observe space from, because some of the things that make it difficult on other parts of the world, other parts of the earth, they don't exist there. So you get a nice, clear, uninterrupted view of the night sky. And as the writer is saying, now that I've seen the night sky there, even with just my normal eyes, I understand why. You could probably assume this person has never seen that many stars in the sky at night. The air was so clear and the darkness so complete, both a clear atmosphere free of pollution and a dark atmosphere free of light pollution from big cities galaxies nearby. So with none of that bothering you or getting in the way of your view, the stars looked close enough to touch, almost as if you could reach up and gather up some of those stars. They were so bright and so different from what you would see in almost any other part of the world.
If you're in Taipei or Kaohsiung, of course, and you look up at the sky at night, yeah, you can see some stars, but you don't see hundreds or thousands of stars like you would in the Atacama Desert there. So, yeah, the stars looked so close that he could almost touch them. And watching the Milky Way stretch across the heavens felt so peaceful, as if the universe itself had stirred something deep within me. Okay, so remember, everybody, we are living in the Milky Way galaxy. Of course, there are billions of galaxies in the universe, and the one we live in is the Milky Way, and that's pretty cool if you can see the Milky Way at night. When I first saw the Milky Way when I was a kid, I thought, wow, what are those clouds doing so high up in the sky? That's pretty cool. And then later I realized that was actually the galaxy that I was looking at, and when that happens, it can make you feel extremely small. And yes, he was watching the Milky Way stretch across the heavens. Here, the heavens just means the universe, the sky at night. It felt very peaceful, and it was like the universe itself had stirred something deep within him. It's like the universe was trying to communicate with him.
Wow, a very intense feeling of being connected with life and space and your place in it. All right, let's listen to the last part of the paragraph before we say goodbye.
Now, back home, I'm still reflecting on my incredible journey. Traveling across Chile gave me more than just beautiful sights. It gave me memories that will last a lifetime.
第三部分介绍形容词 incredible， 指的是极好的、惊人的或是令人难以置信的。举例来说 The artwork in this magazine is incredible. 这本杂志内的插图画得非常棒。或者 The special effects in this movie are truly incredible. 这部电影中的特效真的非常惊人。
Okay, so here's our final paragraph, and we can tell from this paragraph that the trip is over, but our writer needs to sort of conclude the trip here and let us know that it's over, and we're going to find out his general impressions of the trip. He says, now back home, I'm still reflecting on my incredible journey. So here, to reflect just means to think about something that happened before. You can reflect on yourself to try to figure out exactly how you're living your life or whatever, and how you can change things. So here's reflecting on his trip. He's just remembering it, remembering the good things and trying to forget about the bad things. It was an incredible journey. It was a journey or a trip that he'll never forget.
There you go. Reflecting on it, digesting it, sort of thinking about it over and over. Something that's really powerful in your life. It could be a great book you just finished, or a really wonderful movie you've watched, or a great holiday you've been on. It kind of changes you in a way, and you don't just do it and forget about it. You think about it afterwards because it was so powerful and profound and maybe life-changing in some small way. And traveling across Chile, the writer says, gave me more than just beautiful sights. Of course, there were wonderful sights, those experiences in the mountains and the night sky and all that stuff. Beautiful sights, beautiful things to see. But more than that, it gave me memories that will last a lifetime. So yes, better than just a quick trip to a local amusement park or a quick trip to a beach with a friend on the weekend. This is a life-changing journey and probably something that he'll be talking and remembering and thinking about for many, many years to come. Wonderful experience there, and I'm glad we got to share a little bit of it.
Indeed, and of course, we would expect our dear listeners to have such trips themselves, and if you want to tell people about it, you might want to consider using this particular format. Just talk about your trip and then wrap it up in the final paragraph and say you're back home, but you're reflecting on your trip and you'll never forget it, and of course, your friends will want to know all about it. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes Hanny, our beloved Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分最后，作者提到 Watching the Milky Way stretch across the heavens felt so peaceful, as if the universe itself had stirred something deep within me. 看着银河在天际间延展，感觉是如此宁静，仿佛整个宇宙触动了我的内心深处。好，这边有2个重点。首先，句子里面的 watch 是感官动词，感官动词是指看、听、闻、感觉之类的动词。那除了 watch， 还有 see、look at、notice、listen to, hear, smell, feel 等等，用来表达透过感官所观察到的周遭人事物。用法是感官动词加受词加受词补语。这个受词补语可以用到原形动词或者是 VING 或 PP， 不过这3种用法意义不同。好，第一个感官动词加受词加原形动词，就像课文的 Watching the Milky Way stretch， 这个用法表示观察到事实或过程。我们也造个例句，I didn't notice anyone leave this room. 我没注意到有任何人离开这个房间。第二个用法，感官动词加受词加现在分词 VING， 这表示观察到动作正在进行。例如 They heard someone talking downstairs. 他们听到楼下有人正在讲话。第三个，感官动词加受词加过去分词 PP， 这是表达受词的被动状态。例如 We saw a car stuck in the mud. 我们看见一辆车卡在泥泞里了。好，那么第二个重点是as if 跟 as though 意思相同，可以引导副词子句来表达仿佛怎么样，好像怎么样。那他们后面接的子句可以用直说法或假设法。首先在描述情况是事实或可能发生的情况时，子句是用直说法，也就是子句里面的时态就照正常变化，依据你所描述的时间而定。例如 The little girl looks as if she's about to cry. 那个小女孩看起来快哭了。这有可能是事实，我们不用假设语气。好，那如果是在描述跟事实相反或不太可能发生的情况时，子句要用假设法，像课文里的As if the universe itself had stirred something deep within me， 这个子句就用到了假设法。好，那现在我们在表达跟现在事实相反时，as if 或是 as though 后面的子句是主词加上 were 或者是加过去式动词。那如果是表达跟过去事实相反的话， as if 或是 as though 后面的子句是主词加 had 加 PP。 好，举例来说 Matt speaks as if he were an expert. Matt 说话的样子仿佛他是个专家，可是事实上他不是专家，所以子句用到了假设法，我们 be 动词用 were 去表达。再看个例句 He looked as though he had just seen a ghost. 他看起来像是刚刚看见鬼一样。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单词吧。
Apparent. It soon became apparent that Greg wasn't interested in helping us. Shade. Kelly has several shades of red lipstick, including cherry and rose. Dusty. The shelves at my grandma's house are filled with dusty old books. Vast. The Sahara Desert is a vast region consisting mostly of sand and rocks. Extraordinary. Daniel's new basketball coach quickly noticed his extraordinary talent. Reflect. We should reflect on the mistakes we made so that we can do better next time. Incredible. The view from the top of my building was incredible.
Discussion starter starts now.
Okay, it's time now for our discussion starter. The question is, which part of Chile would you prefer to visit? Torres del Paine National Park or the Atacama Desert, and why?
I think I'd rather visit the Atacama Desert because I've never been to a desert. I think that would be the main reason why. And being a city kid, I never really got to go somewhere where the stars at night were so impressive. So I would be quite curious to see what that would be like. I say I hesitate because I don't think I'd like the dryness and the dustiness of the desert. I think my nose would be quite uncomfortable and things like that. So maybe, a night or two there to enjoy the night. And then maybe head back to the Torres del Paine National Park for a quick dip in a lake or something like that. Get away from the dryness. But I think the dryness of the Atacama Desert would just be something I'd want to experience once in my life.
It does sound pretty cool, but in this particular case, I think I'd rather visit the southern part of Chile, Patagonia, especially this Torres del Paine National Park. It does sound quite cool with those granite mountains and the waving yellow grass and the condors and those animals there. I think it would be pretty cool. And indeed, I would spend some time down there. And of course, I love the water, going boating in those lakes and stuff like that. It does sound more appealing than a dry, hot desert. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program. And please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.